Welcome to Legal AI Conversations. I'm Rok, founder of MPL Legal Tech Advisors. We help small teams adopt AI safely. And I'm excited to say that today's guest is one of the leading voices in legal AI, legal tech, and process innovation, Knut-Magnar Aanestad, currently one of the founders of Saga Legal. To say first, thank you, Knut, for doing this. I know you're very busy, and I really appreciate participating in this on my channel. And Knut, I wanted to ask you, you've led innovation at some of the Norway's top firms like Schut and Kluge, and then you've been also behind several tech startups from Etain to Mygon, and you've been working with AI long before GPT came out. You started in traditional law, and can you tell us a little bit about the early days and how your journey looked?
Well, the first days were already in my studies, I would say, when I started getting the interests on how to apply, the law or regulations on different types of technology. So already when I did my thesis, it was about the internet and the access to public information that came in emails and such, when most people never had heard about email, or they were just starting to get aware of the internet and stuff like that. So that kind of formed the future for me, in a sense. So when I started working with the law, that was very natural for me to work with applying the law on different types of technology and different type of legal aspects and directions. So like data protection, like contracts, early stage IT contracts, like also some corporate law that goes directly into buying and selling companies that were doing technology, IP rights and so on. So basically legal questions around that. I worked in public administration. I worked with also this like influencing law firms to professionalize around this use of technology for a period, and then I worked in law firms also, in a dual role many times, but more and more with the focus on technology over time.
You, in our previous call, you explained to me how the switch kind of happened from you practicing law to you going more into the entrepreneurial waters, more into ventures. And it was really interesting because from first ventures to generative AI, there was quite of a journey. So what were the bigger stages that you stepped over? And I mean, first you used automation, just simple software engineering. Then you kind of were introducing machine learning. Then you were experimenting early on with generative AI, and today Gen AI with Saga Legal. So it's been quite a journey. I'm a very curious guy. So anything new, I just want to test it. It goes for things you find in the supermarket to new technology to anything, and experiences as well. So early stage, we started trying to automate different kinds of legal processes, but always connected to what we would call the legal process or the legal project. So early on, we were looking at how can we sort of break down a matter or a case or a project. Doesn't matter what you call it, but it's more or less the same legal engineering process, if I may. You start with the facts. You need to understand what has happened, be it in your municipality job of childcare, or be it in a law firm with a big contract. Is that the facts is what you really need to. So we started to map up this with phases, saying this is onboarding, getting information in. This is the phase where we structure and understand what has happened and create a single source of truth together with the client and maybe also the opposing party and such, in that, and structuring that. What are the deliverables in the different phases, moving over to what's to the legal sources, getting those in and starting to work with them, understand them, of course, apply them on the different questions, legal questions that had arisen, and then going all the way to sort of the legal deliverable at the end. What do we produce, and what's quality? What does quality mean in what we produce as a lawyer? So all of those questions were sort of on the table first, and then when we have all of that information, we can look at the process and say, hey, this can be automated, deterministically, right? With if this, then that's sentences and document automation and capturing information in a structured way, and from that creating a document or creating a new process and such. So building that into one system was sort of the first stage, and then on top of that, we tried to do AI. Like, you came to the phase where you were going to and wanted to do legal research. So early on, we had this collaboration also with the legal service provider, legal information provider, that said, well, what if we can automate the request into the database, and then have also the database find sources based on reading one of the deposition or whatever document you put in. So having AI sort of structure the feedback and finding legal sources. That's the first things we were doing. And then, of course, we did contract and M&A stuff as well with Luminance and all of those tools were early on, right? The previous wave, I would say, of AI into legal that we had based on vectors and finding similarities in text and all of that. You definitely used a lot of energy and information. You needed a lot of examples and data to train and to get those similarities to actually work quite well. But when they did, they certainly brought a lot of value and took down time. Then, Google invented the transformers, and I was involved in a startup called Mygon, where the basic principle was to find and use different transformers. And those who know the history know that also transformers are the first language models, and they're the basic architecture that's used also to create the large language models that we have today. So that was a technological shift, and that happened in 2017, and already in 2018 and 2019. Mygon was training transformers, finding, capturing data, defining what legal entities were, etc., and putting this all into a system that could read a specific agreement like an NDA or a DPA and make a red flag report. So that was sort of mind-boggling at the time, right? And really changed the aspect of, well, now it understands language and can create language in a totally different way than we could with the other systems, with the vectors and all of the similar comparison and stuff like that. So then we just worked with that, got that into quite a few companies. They used it in their commercial departments to get rid of the NDA very, very fast. So a lot of time was saved, and they defined the requirements matrix together with us. So we sort of got their requirements for the NDA also into the specifics. So it was some kind of tailoring as well. And, we were already aware of and looking at the GPT as some of the transformers and models coming. So we were kind of waiting for GPT-3. That was going to change everything, et cetera, et cetera. And then GPT-3 came, and with that a bit later, with 3.5, ChatGPT came. And the first thing, we got aware of is that, well, you can access this through an API. It's super simple, So we decided to start creating, what today somebody would now call a GPT wrapper, but it was sort of the first step for us. And we already then, started to work with the system prompts, create personalities like a CD lawyer or a dispute lawyer with the system prompt. So we started to do stuff that we knew how to handle and experiment to make it more relevant for legal work, right? And then we just iterated on that and until we found out that, hey, let's go all in on this, and put all our money and all our effort into this. And we need a new brand. It was called Concise Chat for Legal. It was, it was cool, but not that sexy. And then we teamed up also with 2 companies from the Netherlands and created Saga, and then invested everything that we earned from Saga and from other, consultancy work as well into building it, and just bootstrapping all the way up until today. And I think we'll hit like maybe, 2.5 million euro in revenue just through the bootstrapping journey in having the first Saga deployment in November last year.
That's crazy.
It's been quite a journey,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was just listening in awe. But so many questions. I was constantly looking down because I was noting stuff. One thing before I go into the questions that I noted down, there's a lot of fragmented learnings on that path that I heard. And how did that translate into what Saga is today, and how you're approaching automating anything legal related?
Thank you for that question. That is a very, very good question and a very good cue to something I love to talk about. Basically it's if you condense it down to one word, it's lawyering-centric. It's not lawyer-centric or legal-centric. It's lawyering-centric. If we go all the way back to structuring the different types of matter or the different types of work processes, they have a lot of the same things in them, common denominators in a way, right? But on the other hand, there are differences, of course. An M&A transaction have different phases than a dispute, right? So but all the way back then, we thought, how can we support the lawyer? Because lawyering is, a profession with, I had 6 years of education just to train myself in a highly, sophisticated intellectual activity, which is lawyering. So my firm belief is that, well, some of the things we do with the law can be automated. They don't need that sophisticated thinking in a way to become good enough for society and for the users of that service. But still, the lawyering will really need to be part of forming the output or the consequence of the question to be good enough and to maybe even become better than we can do today without technology, right? So we can actually create a better output for the parties involved. And if we do it for the parties involved, it will also have an impact on our economy and our society. Less friction, less disputes, more harmony, more predictability, etc. That are sort of the core of lawyering. So that means that in building Saga, that is really important. And we think, well, if we can take away what can be automated, that's good, And definitely lawyers want that as well, because there are a lot of stuff that doesn't need their attention, So we can take away that. That's sort of the first step, and I think a lot of focus is put on that in the legal AI communities and solutions, etc. Well, what's the next level? Well, me doing lawyering, I can really get a lot of help to understand, get insights, and structure my information, like we talked about a bit in the first phase, right? What you actually do, which is not, core lawyering, but still it's part of the lawyering process in a way. So understanding the facts, seeing how things are related, seeing the timelines, get new perspectives on things, and really understanding the matter from different perspectives. So that's what I call kind of the assistance phase of using AI as an assistant, just to create those overview, create that timeline, create that, which helps me when I am doing my lawyering, because then I can make better legal research. I can make better legal questions, more precise legal questions, which is, more core lawyering. And then the last thing that I'm, really excited about is also that, when you do your thinking, it's and to elevate your thinking, also, any thinking, but also legal reasoning and legal thinking, this, highly sophisticated intellectual activity, or whatever you want to call it. Lawyers like it when we say that. So we do like that, of course, but it's true also, we should never underestimate that. We need that into the equation. So what we believe is that when doing that, you need to be active in the production phase. So it's not good enough if we're just quality assurers of outputs created by AI. Like the article that Srinidhi and I, the language is the lens, it's all about that, right? So we don't want, and lawyers don't want to be quality assurers to say, oh, can I accept what AI created here? Or do I need to dismiss it? Oh, because you get tricked into, and it lowers quality, and you get tricked into dismissing something because you didn't like the language or whatever. Maybe you shouldn't have dismissed it. And also you get tricked into applying something that you might shouldn't. So to take, real ownership, and we often call it, to create enough task density in the creation process, we want to include the lawyer at an earlier stage when using AI to create something. So that's one of the things. The other thing is that, when I have created something, doesn't mean I have done, finished my document or whatever. If I have done some legal thinking, I've presented it, then we can use AI also to challenge me. To bring things back and say, I've done this many times, we have the devil's advocate also in the Saga solution, which is really popular. So basically it gives me feedback saying, it doesn't need to know the legal background. It can just hammer on my arguments, they're not as strong as you think, and I see you put this legal resource and you've read it in this way, but beware, it can also be seen from the different angle and such. So it brings back friction into my reasoning and my thinking that will elevate my thinking over time. So that's basically, going all the way back from how we did the different phases and structured the legal work, applying that and making sure you keep the lawyer in the equation when using AI and when creating AI solutions. Well, that's, a lot of secrets in the sauce. So I think that will make legal work even better and still keep the efficiency, gains that we. So long answer. You got me going. You put that coin.
I like that because there were so many great points here, and there's one thing that that keeps on surfacing, which is you learned a lot. You focused a lot on how to break down the lawyer's day early in the days. So those are the lessons that you're bringing in the equation here. In today's jargon, we call that context engineering, basically, right? Managing the data engineering through the flow of the task of any kind of workflow. Would you say that early in the days and today, would you say that lawyers maybe underestimated a little bit how much of their specific parts of task could be broken down into repeatable steps?
Definitely. I think we noticed that already back then, but I don't do it like that, So we had to get up to a very, high level to get everybody on board, Oh, the first thing is you look at the facts and you structure the facts, right? And they would say, yeah, that's true, but I do it differently and I do it differently. So,
exactly.
Doing it is then, well, that's good. But if we're going to get anywhere with this automation, we have to find a way that your firm does it, or we had to, agree on something. And the same goes through the other phases also on that. It's been, the knowledge management issue for decades. We don't do our SPA that way. That's the rural way of doing it. I remember one lawyer saying, we do it differently here in the capital. Even in Norway, right? Small country, right? So that's been they're very individualistic, and they my way is the best way and such, because you never been trained in methodology in project management, at least during my study years. That was not an issue at all. You were trained in the methodology of thinking and doing legal reasoning, finding the sources, and then, go to the act first and see if that blah, blah, blah. So basically, we were not used to that. And then we had to find our way on that, each and every one, basically. Very little systematic thinking and sort of templates on this is the way we do it, even in larger law firms until recently, where we see that has developed as well. So, that has been inherently difficult, I would say, just because of these reasons or whatever.
I get a lot of pushback with exactly with the issues that you were explaining. I was trying to name it like lawyers are not used to thinking from the business perspective and the operational perspective. They're not used to looking from that perspective at their processes. But it's actually the product management. That's actually exactly the thing. I'm also coming from a bigger enterprise, and project management was a big thing. And this is the only way that you can make sure that you're going in the right direction with all your different tasks without them actually repeating. There could be like 5 different processes that kind of do the same task, 5 different tools doing the same thing.
Yes.
When you were building the projects before, the ventures before, they were actually solving that problem on an abstract level, right? So many different firms could use it. And is this a big part? Can we say that this is a big part of Saga Legal today as well as a platform?
Yeah, I would say so. It's very, very project-centric or matter-centric, whatever you want to call it. We see that lawyering happens, or, lawyers work always in a context. So creating a space or a workspace or whatever, project, whatever you want to call it, where you can add your context and be agile and flexible in starting at the first phase, etc., and moving through solving the case within that workspace, making also, relevance score a lot better, because you decide yourself what information is in there, and that is then approved to be relevant to your matter, and also, of course, then less information in there, rather than just connecting to some huge database or various huge databases, being your own DMS or being, the legal resource database or the entire internet or whatever you want to connect to. So I think to get down to that focus point and really get and create a tool that works within the framework, well then, use the same entity as you would use on the framework.
Yeah. I'm sorry for drilling down so much into this, but the reason is I like so much what you said right now, because it's showing exactly there is no building solution or automation on top of a broken foundation. So all the frameworks, all the processes, everything is is pointed towards let's build the foundation first. And when you have a foundation, you can get the most out of it. And how much do you see when firms that you work with adopt AI tools? I'm not talking about Saga. I'm talking like you work with firms that also adopt other different specialized tools and so on. How much do you see them being satisfied in the end? And what would be the bigger reasons of them not being satisfied in cases when they're not satisfied?
Well, I think a key issue is understanding what we call the viability space of the technology at any time. What can this technology actually do? What can I expect that it does for me? So I can align my tasks and my expectations to actually what the product is. That's very basic. Even though with becoming a good prompt engineer and us doing the context engineering that we help a lot with too, and all has to do with creating the most the most relevant output to the user in any situation. That's basically our mantra. So with the good prompt, with good system prompts, with good context engineering pipelines, etc., how can we sort of build and use all of those tools to create something that feels relevant within the viability space that the lawyer understands that they have? And when they're not satisfied, is that they say, oh, it can do this in a small scale with one document, for example, and they don't know, and they never learned about the context window or just the concept of more information, more difficult for AI to navigate in and create relevant information. A bit unprecise, but still, that concept. If they just try to apply what they used or succeeded with at small scale and say, hey, now I can do the entire due diligence on this or whatever, they will be disappointed. And, disappointment is the most secure way to having disappointed or saying or to ditching a tool as a lawyer.
Yeah, it seems like the hype that was done around the AI helped us quite a lot because the awareness is out for the technology much more than it was before with machine learning. However, it's also defeating the purpose because everybody thinks it's super easy to implement it. The misunderstanding that I'm seeing is that AI is treated as a tool that can organize your workflows and your huge knowledge base, but it cannot, because the context engineering, so literally old school data engineering, is the one that is giving the information from A to B, and then AI gives an answer based on that. And when you're talking about the context window, you do have models that have, 1 million token context window, but what is not so much talked about is that like the first first piece of the message and the last piece of the message are the ones that are getting attention. The rest, even within the model's thinking, are already predicted, most of it. They're like this concept of a black hole, or like lost in the middle. So those are also all the things that you need to kind of take into consideration when you want to plug in your 5 different Google Drives and SharePoint with no naming convention for files. And then you want to use an out-of-the-box chatbot that you pay 10, 15 euros a month for. This is where I see the disappointment coming from. So I was really happy when you, in the previous answers previously, when you explained your journey, like what you were focusing on, because if you're building a platform that is bootstrapped and growing so much, it's because it's built in it delivers high quality. There would be no growth without it. So, but even you are approaching it exactly the same way, the old school boring way, right? Of first looking at the process and, from your perspective, the workflows and how can I break this down and abstract it? And then let's see what we can do with that afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need more voices like this, I think, in the space.
Thank you. It's important. We, right in the middle now, we're building more of this legal information group with lawyers and data scientists, just to bridge that gap and see how we can model that and model the context work or context flow, the context engineering, like you're saying, Rock, that it's so important. And how can we then, getting access to a lot of legal sources and documents, break this down into other types of entities and start working with this more like with data, more like information entities than documents, So that's a big area that we do a lot of work on, and that is getting better by, I wouldn't say the day, but at least by the week.
I don't know whether I can ask you this or not. I don't know whether you can talk about this, and my editor.
Well, you can ask me anything, but I'll decide if I answer.
Yeah, that's anything to do. But you were last time we were discussing about also AI in the more education space, and how it can be that partner with you. And you were telling me that there is an idea that you have that you want to promote, which is using AI in within that kind of a feature in the platform. Is this something you can talk about?
Sure. Yeah, on a high level and generic level, definitely. Well, and we have already done some test projects with universities, law schools on this as well. How do we bring in AI as a friction tool, or a tool that will stimulate the learning rather, and bring friction into the learning phase of lawyers? Because, basically you have none, or at least very little, maybe just in a lab, of the automation. If you learn to set up legal automation, that could be, relevant in your job. But in order to learn, legal thinking and lawyering, what you want is to maximize the friction, the thinking and the friction and the task density for the students. So that's a very, that's just 1 out of 3, in a way, that we do in the Saga platform. So that means we create a special edition with special assistants that are, Gemini and also OpenAI. They have sort of the study mode or the learning mode. This is that mode on legal steroids, in a way.
I was also kind of working on an education initiative, and it was very hard because we were working with groups of minors, which here in the Netherlands, there's a special act of the, for data privacy of those minorities under 16. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of pushback here. How can we assure things? And in the end, you never can, right? Like even if you're running, let's say in real time, if you're running evaluations, you cannot evaluate everything. And the cost is through the roof. And in the end, you're using a non-deterministic tool to evaluate a non-deterministic tool. So how do you kind of handle that? Because, how do you handle that?
Well, what we've done so far is that we've created some test cases around this. One that's doing practical assignments in that specific law school, right? So it's an assistant that will not guide you, but what should I say? In a way, guide you, but guide you with friction, intentional, putting intentional friction into the process from starting to look and understand the assignment all the way until you created it, right? So we want the students to participate in the process all the way. And so we've done one of those sort of assistance and journeys for the students for the practical assignments. Solving, you get a case and this person did this person, then they met that person, or this company did, what are the legal questions, and blah, 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 like that. So we've done that, and then solved with students a couple of, not many, and not quantitative relevance, but qualitative relevance, and then we've also written a report on this as well. So we have students that work for us that have done this project for us with the university. I think that's a perfect match in a way, and then also for what's it called, legal history of the law, or legal history. I don't know.
that goes all the way back to Rome, right? And understanding everything that has happened and why we have our legal system the way we have it today, right?
Yeah.
So both of types of tasks sort of we've done and created a report so far. And then the next step would be like a pilot with a pilot group of students. Also, so that's what we're discussing now.
Yeah. So I feel like the evaluation process of those tools today is more like of a process of how are you going to define the collaboration with the domain experts and users? Because it's not like, I don't know, if you try to evaluate a database search platform to search through the database of cases, it's going to be pretty easy. I mean, either it's going to come up with the correct one or it's going to be a 500. Well, maybe I shouldn't say that because we also
create a question, or you create 50 questions and you create the gold standard answer, and then you run it many times and you see how it works. It's pretty standard evaluation.
But with conversational tools, when you are trying to measure how much value did you bring by adding more friction, how did you actually add value to the outcome of a student in this specific process, I think that's a research by itself, how you would evaluate that. But I think in the end, it's way less risk if you get it wrong than if you use it for, let's say, legal research in the end, right?
Yeah, I think that's totally right. And I think maybe we're searching for a better way to introduce AI into learning law than just saying, hey, it's okay if you use ChatGPT or whatever tool. You can use that to solve your assignment. But how can we sort of enter into something and start a journey where we say, hey, how do we learn and how do we teach the students how to use this in a way that enhances their learning? And then, how do you evaluate that? That's a bit subjective, right? But that potentially at least enhance your learning rather than take you away from the learning, because without any friction of producing the output, you will not be challenged. And if you're not challenged, you won't learn. All these reports say this, like the MIT and all of that, which is very obvious, If I had you write something for me and I read it afterwards and I put my name out, of course I would learn less. I would use less brain activity than if I wrote this myself. It's kind of obvious, but still, there are reports saying that. And that same goes, of course, for the AI.
So it's good. We have something to refer to when we're creating posts on LinkedIn. This report said that. That's good. No, but build on top of what you said, because that's very interesting. It's also tying to something you said before. You said before that you feel like we're kind of in the new wave of AI. So I think the first one was, as you very well explained, but to summarize it, you're talking to what you already have. Your data, you're getting answers. Let's say like that. The second wave, I think, was when we kind of figured out that we can use AI running in the background of our processes without us having to instruct it, right? Because the developers were writing system prompts and they were putting them in those tools where you kind of hit the button and it does something.
Yeah. Exactly.
And it comes with an output. And the third stage, I feel like by what you're describing, by what I'm also kind of seeing in other industries when I take a quick peek, is that we can use AI to enhance to be that coach, to go back and forth, to challenge us, be our devil's advocate. And that's very interesting because I see some people that I talk to. So I try to talk to as many different legal professionals and legal tech founders throughout the week. I'm proactively scheduling as many calls as I can so I can have a lot of different information. And what I'm seeing is that some of the lawyers have already started to kind of figure out that they can also use ChatGPT for that. So not to be afraid of hallucinations, but just disregarding all the citations and all the factual stuff that ChatGPT is trying to give, and just kind of try to use it for the creative part of things. Like, okay, so test this argument, look at it from both angles. So when was it timeline? When did you start thinking about that next stage, and how are you going to bring Saga into it?
Well, I think, about 6 months ago, we started creating our first version of the Devil's Advocate assistant. I think we called it roles back then. Now we've made them more like assistants, but doesn't matter what you call it. So we created that already back then, and then we've had various versions of that and specialized versions of it. Imagine you have the Devil's Advocate, but he works in a specific sector, or he's an expert in a specific domain, etc. So bringing that in, and now we're taking this sort of to the next level, where you could say, you sit in the Word plugin and you say dismiss, or I want to bring this in as a red line. Well, what if I could get challenged instead of this? Challenged to create a new and more a better version according to my position. Instead of having AI doing that, or before giving the red lines from the AI, well, what are sort of the core of what you want to achieve, so you get to be part of it and not just have AI suggest something, even though it's based on your playbook or your requirements, etc., etc. So we're trying to build it into micro steps also within the automation processes, so that you if you read the article that I wrote with Srinidhi, also with language as a lens, you'll see there a few practical ways that we suggest that you can work and do in order to take back the ownership, in a way, take back the interaction in the creation of the legal work as well, to be and not be lured into something that you don't really mean.
Yeah, that you don't really understand how it works, and you're just taking the outputs and the hell with it.
Yeah, and,
it saves time.
The language, the language is good, and that is quite smart, without being aware enough of and taking enough ownership to what it really means.
Yeah. Of course, in your normal offering, you always try to challenge hallucinations by giving the user the source as well, right?
Of course.
This is like all of that, but that's just like the basics. So this is also what I'm seeing in people are trying to figure out really like, okay, so how can we squeeze the most out of it, right? This was one of the most promised technologies. So it's great for automating, but like we had that before. Like literally most of the engagements that I had in the past few months didn't end up really with doing AI, because like when you're kind of figuring when you create a foundation, when you create the workflows, when they have most of the things automated that they don't have to think about, then it's like, okay, but then adding AI on top of that is going to be a bit, it's not deterministic, so it's like it's not a one and done. Either you're going to buy something and you're going to be being taken care of by a team of experts that are really constantly on this, or it's better to just have this automated that you have.
It's interesting to see how much effort is put into trying to make the LLMs as close as possible to being deterministic. Did you get that?
Yeah, I heard that. Like literally, you just opened the intro into the me inviting you to have a second podcast on that specific topic, because this is oh my god, and literally like how long? Okay, so if we think from the perspective of somebody developing this application, like just to try to explain it in non-technical terms, what is the difference between developing a login system or a CMS and developing one workflow with the LLM? what is the difference in the approach of how you take this as a product?
I think you focus more directly on describing the steps and of the workflow with specific rules, of course, in the first situation. And the other one is more the approach of, trying to give with normal language instructions that are so clear, and iterate on those instructions to get them clearer and clearer, and take away the possibilities for the model to be to not be deterministic in a way, and being that clear. So you start from different ends, I would say, and a lot easier, of course, to create a deterministic process with the deterministic tool,
Yeah, and what I was, the way that I asked the question was super weird, but in the end, like, it's more of it's like an experimentation, right? Like you said, you start with something and then you iterate. That first something is your best guess, based on the knowledge that you have in that moment in time.
Yeah.
So when you're going to be getting failures, your knowledge is going to increase, and that's how you're going to get there. But that's a process. That's and not like make it go to the database and pull the data out. That's just a start of the LLMs, right?
Exactly. But also, you work with the prompts and instructions and everything, but, what can you do with the context that you bring in? Can you format your information in a specific way that makes it easier to create the deterministic approach or result, to get it to be consistent. That's what you wanted to do, right?
And it's actually, if we translate to prompt engineering, it's a very similar approach, right? In prompt engineering as well, you want a certain type of quality of the answer. You give in a prompt and you throw in a document, right? And it gives a bad answer. So then you try and you go through this document and take only one section of the document and you throw it in and you trim your prompt, right? Mm-hmm. And that's exactly thinking from the perspective of developing systems around LLMs, such as Saga Legal. That's exactly the thing, right? So like you try to add more things, you try to remove them, and you see where it works best on the biggest percentage of cases, right? Because in the end, you can never cover everything and you can never satisfy every single edge case, right?
No. And you need to, have this systematic thinking, how can this work best in as many cases as possible, at least in the approach that we have and many others have, that is, multi-purpose, or whatever you want to call it, legal AI tool, that's different from creating something that is a point solution that does, one thing.
How would you, all those learnings that we have gone through in this one small conversation, packed with all the different bits of let's centralize the knowledge first, let's centralize and standardize our processes, let's figure out what the workflows are, let's define them, and then let's go into kind of using automations and then AI to kind of enhance that, and then let's go into using AI to kind of advance all of this, right? So when law firms today, a lot of them, when I talk to smaller ones, are a bit confused where to even start with this. I try to kind of explain that first you start with the processes, but where do you see this going in the future with law firms kind of understanding where to start? Because, and just to finish this very super long question is, we are not in AI since 2 years ago, but we had machine learning before, and we kind of had to have the same approach there as well.
Yeah. Well, it's always hard to predict the future. We're generally way off, and we generally too optimistic of what will happen in the short term, and too maybe too pessimistic on what can be changed in the longer run, right? So that's sort of the general rule of that as well. But I do believe, and I take this back. I have one engineer told me today, you have a very analytical way of thinking. Yeah, so that's that was kind of interesting. But I like to take
product management.
Yeah, exactly. I like to take this back to sort of where we see the three ways
that lawyers now can be get help or get assistance or get friction from them. I think the law firms and the technology will develop, and the lawyers and the providers will develop also the tools using the technology in a way that the relation between these three will be moved. So I do think with more technology, better technology, that we still will see an increase in the capabilities of doing automations that are of high quality. We'll see an increase in that. We'll see an increase in also the assistance that can be done, structuring more bigger information, getting them just the way you want them, and maybe also not only to lawyers. So that I think that assistance part and assistance to who or to whom is probably correct, is an interesting development as well. And that goes also to the friction part, right? Because if you can start to give intentional and guided friction, maybe we will see that experts within domains can handle the legal side of it a lot better than they can today, actually. So that's basically where I see that we will move more and more towards an AI first legal service delivery. How fast it will be, how many areas, how complex tasks it will entail, that remains to be seen.
Yes, and I am very happy that we have innovators like you on the forefront, because I do believe that the grounded approach is the only one to get there. And you've learned a lot through the journey. I appreciate the part that you started even before it was mainstream. So you got a lot of learnings there.
It's been a really, really nice journey. And feeling that what I do is more relevant than ever before, and all of that is a gift and a blessing that I'm living, and I really want to create something good, and not only for the lawyer and the law firms, but something that makes difference. So that's the approach, that's the driver, and what keeps me going at this energy level.
Yeah, it's nice to hear that we have in companies like this. When the bubble bursted in the internet bubble, when it bursted, only 2% of the companies stayed, right? So it's good to see that we have companies that are evolving and planning to stay, and not just enjoying the hype.
Definitely.
Like a lot.
There's a long-term thinking based on a long journey up until now.
Yeah, thank you so much, Knut, for doing this. This was amazing.
Hey, Rock, I appreciate our conversation. Your questions are really well thought through, and they bring out things that really engage me and brings out the best in me, I think. So thanks a lot for this conversation.
And thanks so much for your words. Hopefully we're going to be able to do this sometime in the future. And I'm going to be paying attention to the blast that Saga Legal is going to do on the market in the future as well.
Let's plan for that, Rock. Let's plan for that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Knut. And have a great time in Turkey. And safe flight back.
Thank you.
Have a good one. Big thanks to Knut-Magnar and some great takeaways. Workflows before tools, using AI to enhance your lawyering as opposed to save you time and chat with your data, and start narrow, expand safely. See you next Saturday.